Summer isn't over, oh no, my friends. Since after the Man of Steel comes Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four with Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby are set to revolutionize the MCU with a retro-futuristic film of an entirely new kind. Since this project is probably the most important and anticipated one since Endgame, it is meant to launch us straight toward Doomsday while taking place in another universe, and therefore without any connection to our MCU. And despite everything, the Fantastic Four are already pillars of tomorrow's MCU. In the comics, they are among the founding characters, and have taken part in most of the major events like Civil War, Secret Invasion, Annihilation, and even Secret Wars. They are what we call legacy characters. Without them and their success, there probably wouldn't have been Spider-Man, Hulk, or even Iron Man. The Fantastic Four, made up of Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing, are four heroes who should normally ring a bell for you, but that's not all. Even if you know who they are, you likely don't have a positive opinion of them. In the eyes of the general public, they often remain second-tier heroes, and it took until 2025 for them to finally appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, more than 17 years after the first Iron Man. And today, on the occasion of the release of the movie Fantastic Four First Steps, I'm going to try to help you understand why this movie is coming out now, why it's important, and why you're going to fall in love with these characters. And we're going to dive together into everything you need to know before the movie, so you can sit comfortably in the dark theater, calm and ready to fully enjoy the film without any questions on your mind. Just like Superman, we're going to do most of this guide without spoilers. I'll let you know as soon as we get into the theory section, and therefore into that famous spoiler part. You're here with Kevin Buchart, your new favorite theorist from Ton Rage and your favorite rage. Roll the intro. A complex project? Unlike the Avengers, who were initially snubbed by comic book readers when they were introduced to cinema, the Fantastic Four have always been extremely popular. Marvel's first family embodies all the values and spirit of adventure of the House of Ideas, but unfortunately, they've always been relatively difficult to adapt to the big screen. Because their universe, as their name suggests, is very fantastical, sometimes strange, and the fact that they were created in the 1960s is no coincidence. Parallel dimensions, time monsters, space travel, and world devourers, these are all themes that fit perfectly with their era. And all of that hasn't always been easy to modernize. That's why the adaptations have almost always tried to go back to a more down-to-earth origin story, facing their eternal rival, Victor Von Fatalis, or Doctor Doom in the original version. And even though the 2000s version is generally well-liked, without being anything extraordinary, if you know what I mean, the 2015 version is a total disaster. Still, I'm telling you, this team is on the same level as Spider-Man, Superman, or Batman. They should already be known to the general public, but they've always remained mostly confined to geek circles. So, why did Marvel wait so long to include them? The answer is actually pretty simple. It's a matter of rights. After an unreleased film in the 90s shot in 2 weeks for obscure reasons, 21st Century Fox bought the rights for next to nothing, along with the X-Men rights at the end of the 90s. It was a time when Marvel, the publisher, was going through the worst crisis in its history. Kids weren't reading comics anymore, they were playing video games, and everything was falling apart. To save itself, Marvel sold rights to its top characters to major movie studios. Sony got Spider-Man, Universal took Hulk and Namor, and Fox got all the mutants and the Fantastic Four. So they produced two feature films, Fantastic Four in 2005 and its sequel, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer in 2005. With a pretty cool cast, Ewan Grufford as Reed Richards, the beautiful Jessica Alba as Susan Storm, Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm, and our very own Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. One of his very first breakout roles, a role he recently reprised in Deadpool and Wolverine before being skinned alive by Cassandra Nova.
Not my favorite Chris.
Despite a fairly decent commercial success, the second film made less than the first, even though it had a bigger budget. As a result, Fox buried the franchise. And to be honest, the critics weren't kind. At the time, superhero movies weren't taken seriously yet. Even though X-Men, Spider-Man, and Batman were hits, the audience wasn't ready to see a team as nerdy as the Fantastic Four. They wanted something grounded, something realistic. Cosmic adventures just didn't work. In 2015, Fox still tried a reboot, but mainly to keep the rights. And then, it was a nightmare from start to finish. On paper though, it started off well. Josh Trank was chosen to direct the film after The Excellent Chronicle, which was shot with a handheld camera where teenagers gain powers and everything goes off the rails. The ultimate anti-superhero film that mocked a generation. On this new film, he teamed up with screenwriter Jeremy Slater, who also came off a good film, The Lazarus Effect. But very quickly, the two of them had completely opposite visions of what they wanted to do. One admires the talented, flashy actors, while the other prefers Batman Begins for its dark, realistic style. As a result, the film ended up as a movie with no clear identity because no vision took over. Yet, there was potential. A good director, a promising cast, with Miles Teller as Reed, Kate Mara as Sue, Jamie Bell as Ben, and the excellent Toby Kebbell as Victor. But when the cast was announced, one choice made people cringe. Forget all the controversies about wokeness, it was Michael B. Jordan in the role of Johnny, Sue's adoptive brother. And yet, you have to admit, he played an excellent Human Torch. And I'll tell you something, an unpopular opinion. There's a part of me that likes this movie. At least a part of this movie. The beginning, up until their transformation. Yes, it's dark and far from what the Fantastic Four should be, but there was real potential with these actors. I'd love to see them cameo again, especially Miles Teller, whom I love and dream of as the Maker. A Reed from another universe who went bad, lost his way, maybe because his movie is abysmally bad. Because let's admit it, the second part of the movie, it's just a complete mess. Back then, the Fox executives came and made a mess out of an already messy situation. They demanded reshoots and handed the edit over to another director. In short, it turned into a mess. It was a monumental flop. Only $167 million in revenue for a budget of $120 million, not including promotion, and on the critics' side, it was even worse. Several Razzie Awards to top it off. Worst film, worst remake, worst director, and the cherry on top, a nice 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's safe to say that didn't help improve the team's image. On the contrary, it made them look completely outdated. And meanwhile, the MCU was booming. But in 2019, plot twist, Disney buys Fox. Everyone gets excited because Marvel Studios gets the rights to the X-Men, but also the Fantastic Four. And a new movie immediately goes into development because yes, the Fantastic Four are extremely important characters for Kevin Feige. They're his favorite characters. And by the way, the whole Multiverse saga has only one purpose: to be able to bring the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the MCU. John Watts, the director of the Spider-Man trilogy with Tom Holland, is first attached to the project. Having already rebooted Spider-Man in the MCU, is supposed to reboot another legendary franchise for Marvel. But Watts ended up stepping down in 2022, worn out by the superhero genre, and honestly, that's excellent news. Since he recently stated that he planned to make the family a team of young heroes. In short, he wanted to make another franchise like Spider-Man. Homecoming. No thank you. In the end, Matt Shakman, the director of WandaVision, took over. And what a joy that is. A big fan of the characters, Shakman wants to do things differently. But first, the casting. The Fantastic Four? First Step went through an extremely laborious casting phase. Months of rumors, leaks, false leads, and an actor's strike that slowed down the whole process. The cast was finally revealed on February 14, 2024. And it will star Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Bachrach, two established and currently hyped actors for the couple, and two rising young talents for Ben and Johnny. Well, young, you know what I mean. It's the first film of Phase 6, and above all, the very first project entirely developed under the new creative directive put in place after Bob Iger's return to Disney. I'd like to remind you that his predecessor almost sank the MCU due to overload and rushing things. Now it's quality over quantity. And here, the contrast is huge compared to Captain America, which almost had to be completely reshot, or Thunderbolt, which was postponed at the last minute because of the strikes. Here, there were no production problems. Some minor reshoots, which is totally normal, but nothing last minute, and most of the filming was done on practical or natural sets. Clearly, for this movie, there are no excuses. Everything went well. This is pretty much Marvel's last chance to win back the audience with its characters. After a series of projects with mixed results featuring lesser-known characters, actors who aren't very bankable, except for Pedro Pascal, of course, and a very different aesthetic from what the audience is used to, but we'll talk about that. Right from the start, Matt Shakman says it. He wants to make this film something unique, a real reinvention. In fact, for me, this is the true beginning of tomorrow's new MCU, the soft reboot. So, goodbye to the origin story. Goodbye to the traditional Victor Von Doom, whom we've already seen in every adaptation. Don't worry, Doom will be back, but not right away. This time we're doing something new. Universe 828. So now we know why they haven't been in the MCU until now, but how do we justify it from a storytelling perspective? We narrowly avoided John Watts and his teenage Fantastic Four. And we're starting with a team of characters aged 30 to 50. To explain this, some thought they were stuck in the quantum realm for decades. Others imagined they had been there from the beginning without anyone noticing. While others assumed they came from the past or the future. In the end, Marvel chose something almost logical within the framework of the Multiverse saga. And at the same time, we've been in this saga for 6 years, and apart from Deadpool and Wolverine, no other project has taken place 100% in another universe yet. Maybe it's time, my friends. And that's what makes it so unique. All the MCU codes are set aside. The creative brief is completely wide open. And the creatives have much more freedom to tell an original story with their own villains. We're also sure to get plenty of Easter eggs or references to their other comic book adventures. Plus, we already know more about Mole Man's role in the film, since Marvel released a totally canon prequel comic that explains the true origin of the team, from their departure into space, to the cosmic ray accident, all the way to their first mission against Mole Man, the leader of an underground society threatened by New York's rapid expansion, driven by Reed Richards' innovations. We learned that Sue Storm will eventually make a pact with this Mole Man to have Subterranea recognized as a full-fledged nation, and this will have an impact on the rest of the film, turning the first enemy of the Fantastic Four into an ally. This alternate universe also allows for very high stakes, with consequences that don't directly affect the rest of the MCU. In reality, this film opens up so many possibilities that it's almost like an Elseworld, similar to the Batman in DC. And honestly, you have to wonder why Marvel didn't try this kind of format earlier, especially after the end of Phase 3 and the Infinity Saga. But beyond this narrative freedom, the Fantastic Four could especially become the real gateway to the multiverse. A clear, accessible, and finally understandable version. We've been waiting for this for years. A simple, visual, and coherent guide to the multiverse, so that everyone, including the young man or those who haven't been following as closely, can understand what's going on, because with Loki, it was very thorough, but very complicated. With Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we just scratched the surface of the concept, and with Deadpool 3 we're still left wanting more. Probably because Marvel ultimately didn't know which direction to take yet, especially with the uncertainties surrounding Kang.
It's just been miss after miss after miss. Let's just take the loss and move on. I think it's been steadily great since Endgame.
But the Fantastic Four, which has always been thought of as the movie just before Avengers 5, would actually have this key role of introduction. By the way, at San Diego Comic-Con 2024, they were the very first heroes confirmed for Avengers Doomsday. And if there's anyone capable of laying the foundations of the multiverse in just a few sentences, it's Reed Richards, just like in Multiverse of Madness, Marvel's greatest mind. He could explain everything, whether in his own movie or at the beginning of Doomsday, while simplifying the concepts for his teammates and therefore for us. It would be the perfect moment to finally lay the foundations. Especially since Mr. Fantastic is known in the comics for studying and understanding the concepts of universes and parallel dimensions. And even though we haven't met Pedro Pascal's version yet, the MCU has already introduced him as such. In Universe 838, where Reed seems to have an in-depth knowledge of the multiverse, even having a foundation dedicated to it and naming the MCU's universe as 616, but also in Deadpool and Wolverine, where Johnny clearly states that his Reed knows the void and how it works.
You are in the void, think of it as purgatory. Reed calls it a metaphysical dump where everything useless goes before being destroyed forever.
And so, the multiverse. And they're surely not the only ones. Because in the comics, the Reeds from the multiverse often gather in what's called the Council of Reeds, which could play an important role in the film's conclusion, or even in Doomsday, to try to deal with the multiple crises. And who knows, maybe unlock multiversal travel. Especially since, as confirmed in the post-credits scene of Thunderbolt and their presence in the Avengers 5 cast, we know they're going to meet the MCU heroes. So everything needs to be very clear from now on. A quick reminder of what we already know. Earth 616 is the main universe of the MCU, nicknamed the Eternal Temporal Flow. We also saw Earth 838 in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with its Illuminati, and Earth 1005 in Deadpool and Wolverine. That's the Fox X-Men universe, the universe where Monica Rambeau ends up at the end of the Marvels. And that will be the X-Men universe in Doomsday, but also the universe of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and the one with Venom, which became canon through the post-credits scene of No Way Home. If we set aside What If in the animated series, that's pretty much it. We know there are infinite universes, watched over since the end of time by Loki, now the god of stories, who sits on his throne overseeing the branches of the Yggdrasil Tree of Realities. But we also know about the Vortex, also known as the Void, a sort of multiversal dumping ground where variants and objects deemed too dangerous are sent, or those coming from universes erased by the TVA. And it will probably become the next battle world, the world that will be created by Doctor Doom after the destruction of the multiverse. But don't worry about that now, we'll talk about it later. For now, let's talk a bit about the TVA. What is it? It's a bureaucracy outside of time, created by He Who Remains, whom we saw in the Loki series, originally tasked with eliminating other realities to preserve only the eternal timeline. Today, under Loki's leadership, their mission is actually to protect them in order to allow free will. And the universe in this movie is one of those branches. It even has a name, Earth 828. A name chosen in tribute to the birthday of Jack Kirby, the creator of the team, August 28th or 828 in English. Now that all of this is established, let's get to the key concept that the movie could develop. In Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we discover the incursion. A collision between two universes caused by a major anomaly between them. It usually leads to the total destruction of one of these universes or both worlds. This concept comes straight from the comics, especially Secret Wars by Jonathan Hickman, and it will be central to the future of the MCU, particularly in Doomsday, which should lead to the end of the multiverse and the rise of Doctor Strange. Except that, whereas in the comics the incursion is natural and inevitable, the MCU emphasizes the responsibility of the heroes. Their journeys and choices, especially those of Doctor Strange, Wanda, and events in the Marvels, triggered these collisions. That's an important detail to remember for what's next. Another recent concept, anchor beings, key characters whose premature disappearance would cause the collapse of their universe. That's what Deadpool and Wolverine reveal to us about Logan, who is the anchor being of Earth 1005. Feige even teased that the one from Earth 616 will have a major role, without telling us yet who it is. But I have a feeling it's probably Peter Parker. And of course, we can't forget about the variants. Yes, that's fundamental. Alternative versions of our heroes in other branches, other universes. Sometimes identical, sometimes radically different, with a different appearance, a different ethnicity, a different gender, or even a completely different species. Even with all that established, many gray areas remain. Even if Doomsday addresses them, it's smarter to start exploring now. In the Fantastic Four, what actually causes an incursion? Where are the other universes located? How do you reach them? What does that mean for the survival of each reality? Because for now, all of that is still too vague. And for the viewers, it's very frustrating. So the movie is the last chance to lay everything out clearly before Doomsday. Now, yes, you might say there's still Spider-Man 4, but that one will be very street level. So we shouldn't wait until the movie that wraps everything up to finally explain how the universe works. You should start now, gentlemen. Since we know the team will play a major role in the multiverse and its disappearance. Since the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts already shows us a so-called multiversal ship joining Universe 616. And even if the ship isn't exactly the same since it has 4 legs instead of 3, it still looks a lot like the Fantastic Four's Excelsior and even has their logo. So, fake out or not, there's a good chance the movie will show us that multiversal travel has actually been cracked. And if Marvel really manages to integrate this whole multiversal aspect into its movie to present it to the general public, then yes, the Fantastic Four: First Steps could very well become the pivotal film of the entire multiverse saga. Who are the Fantastic Four? Alright, that's all well and good, but let's get back to basics. Who are these Fantastic Four? Originally, they're just a group of friends. Reed and his best friend Ben, the young Johnny and his sister Susan, who go into space to test an experimental spacecraft, and they are exposed to cosmic rays that give them powers. The Fantastic Four hold a special place in the Marvel Universe, as you may have understood, and this has been true since their creation. Where most superhero teams are alliances of circumstance, brought together by a common cause, the Fantastic Four are above all a family bound by blood, friendship, and love. This family aspect deeply influences their adventures and the way writers tell their stories. Their victories depend not only on the threat they face, but also on their ability to stay united, to grow together, and to balance private life with responsibility. They are pioneers in Marvel's scientific and cosmic exploration, especially as specialists in the negative zone, which will be key to the Secret Wars storyline. They face the unknown not only to save the world, but also out of a thirst for knowledge and adventure. In the comics, it's Reed Richards, also known as Mr. Fantastic, who is one of the greatest minds on the planet. Along with Hank Pym and Victor Van Doom, they form the trio of the brightest minds in the Marvel Universe. These geniuses have been missed in the MCU, which replaced them with Bruce Banner and Tony Stark, who usually have different roles in the comics. Stark is a genius engineer and politician, while Banner tends to keep to himself. Reed is therefore a scientific genius, an inventor obsessed with knowledge, who embodies the archetype of the scientist absorbed in his intellectual quest, sometimes at the expense of those close to him. He reminds us of Tony Stark in his role as a creator, but while Tony was outgoing and flamboyant, Reed is more reserved, always trying to push his own limits. This obsession often drives him to take reckless risks, sometimes endangering his friends, his family, or even the world. Many crises in the comics arise directly from his experiments. His arrogance and his inability to express his emotions are probably his greatest weaknesses. He has trouble understanding the needs of others and forming connections. Yet, he remains a respected leader and a deeply loved father and husband. In the world of the film, his discoveries allowed his era to reach an exceptional level of technological development, which earned him the admiration of the public. His stretching powers allow him to stretch and shape his body at will. In the comics, he does just about everything with it. Human parachute, bouncing balls, ropes, nets, a real living toolbox. Now, what will all that look like in the movies? We'll see, but behind every great man, there's an exceptional woman. And what about Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman? She's much more than just support, she's the heart of the team. Empathetic, calm, courageous, and intelligent, she understands others where her husband struggles to do so. Together, they form a balance between rational intelligence and emotional intelligence. She's the one who keeps the group together, who makes the tough decisions and calms things down when needed. In short, she's clearly the one who wears the pants. As for her powers, they've evolved over time. She once only turned invisible, but now she can create powerful, even deadly force fields. In the comics, she's sometimes called the group's most powerful member, able to make a skull explode if she chooses. By the way, in the prequel comic, we see that she is able to suffocate her enemies and that she will have a major role to play. She will also lead the Future Foundation with an important diplomatic responsibility, and one Storm can hide another. Storm, Storm, you get it? Since here we're talking about the little brother, Johnny Storm, also known as the Human Torch, the little rebel and troublemaker of the team. He can ignite himself, fly, manipulate fire, and his provocative humor and immaturity can sometimes make him annoying, especially for Ben, who loves teasing him.
Say it, we say Ben!
No, Johnny.
Say it!
I don't wanna!
Say it!
But behind this facade, he's looking for attention, to be noticed, and that's what makes him endearing. He's still the member who hasn't really grown up yet, and his relationship with his big sister Sue is very strong. In the comics, he's an inveterate flirt, a bit superficial, but Kevin Feige and Joseph Quinn wanted to give him a bit more emotional depth in this version, while still keeping that charming side. He's also passionate about cars and an outstanding driver, a side we hope to see explored on screen since the famous comic presents him as a unique member. He's not there as the little brother, but as a true engineer. And finally, Ben Grimm, also known as the Thing. He may be the most iconic, but also the most tragic of the group. Transformed into a stone giant with superhuman strength, he embodies the theme of difference and exclusion. Ben sees his appearance as a curse, unlike the others who have cool powers. Sometimes he blames Reed, who is responsible for his condition, but their friendship always prevails in the end. Ben has always had a special place in the hearts of fans, because he is simply incredible. Jack Kirby incarnate in the comics. A Jew who grew up on the streets of New York, melancholic and quick-tempered, he made Ben an outlet for everything he is. An outlet to whom he gradually offers a form of peace, especially thanks to Alicia Masters, who loves him as he is. She will be played by Natasha Lyonne in the film. Ben is also the team's pilot and the driver of the Fantastica. His Jewish origin is often highlighted in the comics, as well as his past on the streets where he was harassed by a gang, the Yancey Street Gang, which regularly comes back to haunt him. He is especially known for shouting his catchphrase at the start of every fight, the famous,
It's clobbering time.
translated as "it's going to hurt" in French. And from watching the trailers, we see that Johnny won't let go of it, since we learn in the comics that it's a phrase he used at the start of his very first fight against the Moloids and the Mole Man, and it will follow him all his life. By the way, we see in the trailers that the Thing is wearing a beard at one point, which might seem surprising at first, but is actually a tribute to the comics. In the Fantastic Four series created by Jonathan Hickman, we learn that Ben is actually immortal. He doesn't age, can survive almost anything, and therefore outlives his friends. But Reed, who blames himself his whole life for what he did to his best friend, found a cure that allows Ben to become human one day a year, so he can enjoy a normal date with Alicia, his beloved. So he ages one day per year. And Reed discovered that millennia later, Ben has finally aged and sports a long stone beard, which is pretty cool. But beyond each member, it's their relationship that makes the group strong. Reed and Ben have been friends for a long time. Sue and Johnny are siblings, and when Reed and Sue get together, Ben kind of becomes Reed's brother too. Franklin Richards' live-action debut as their son in this movie further strengthens the family dynamic. Johnny and Ben become the cool uncles, Reed and Sue are the parents, and Franklin is a huge source of concern. He needs to be protected even when fights break out. And when there's a baby around, the emotional stakes immediately go up. We'll have to see how Reed handles his role as a father, and who knows, maybe we'll see his little sister Valeria. But hey, one thing at a time. The real strength of the Fantastic Four is that deep down, they're just like us. Unlike DC's Justice League, filled with gods and distant heroes, Jack Kirby created a family that lives in New York, with fans, debts, arguments, and struggles. They're superheroes, sure, but almost in spite of themselves, and that's what makes them human, relatable. We can all see ourselves in one of them. They're not disconnected billionaires or century-old soldiers or even wizards. Sure, they live in the Baxter building, okay, but otherwise, they could be anyone. Actually, you could totally run into them on the street and talk to them, and the choice to set their world in the 60s is no accident. It's a tribute to the characters. Back then, they went into space to take part in the technological race of the Cold War. Although the movie doesn't directly address the conflict, the era's style fits their personalities and Jack Kirby's style perfectly. I'm not sure who suggested this or if he was picked due to his work on WandaVision, but it's a brilliant choice that will give the movie a uniquely fresh atmosphere for a comic adaptation. Moreover, one of the main inspirations for the movie is Life Story by Mark Russell, a miniseries published between 2021 and 2022, where the Fantastic Four age from the 1960s while preparing for the arrival of Galactus. This project coincides with the movie's writing and may have influenced its direction. And speaking of Galactus, the main antagonist of the movie, played by Ralph Hinson. In the comics, Galactus was Galan, an explorer from a universe that existed before ours. Exposed to cosmic energies during the collapse of his world, he merges with the consciousness of his universe and is reborn at the dawn of the Big Bang as Galactus, the devourer of worlds. A being of immense cosmic power who feeds on planets to satisfy his insatiable hunger. A being of immense cosmic power who feeds on planets with well-developed populations. He does not act out of cruelty, but out of necessity. A natural disaster. Just as you can't hold back a tsunami or an earthquake, nothing can stop Galactus. And that's why he surrounds himself with heralds whom he sends across the universe in search of new worlds to devour. Notably, the most well-known among them is Norinrad, the Silver Surfer. But in this movie, Marvel chose a different path. It's Shalabal, Norinrad's love interest in the comics, who becomes Galactus's herald. She will be played by Julia Garner, a choice probably motivated by the desire to set this apart from the 2007 adaptation and its cloud-like Galactus. But that's not all, since Marvel has plans for the Silver Surfer in the future. And I think that exploring a female version of the character in this universe will allow them to reuse the character without having to justify a change of universe or her history with the Fantastic Four. So calm down guys, you'll see him, your Silver Surfer. The movie will adapt the famous Galactus trilogy from issues 48 to 50 of the Fantastic Four, where Galactus arrives for the first time to consume Earth. The Silver Surfer warns the heroes, the Watcher Uatu helps them, and Johnny then goes to find the ultimate nullifier, an absolutely crazy weapon capable of defeating absolutely anyone. And yes, it's totally intentional, it's Marvel, we don't care. Galactus of course ends up fleeing to avoid being destroyed by this weapon, but in this MCU, Galactus could very well have a different role. The Multiverse saga has started to lay the foundations for a cosmic lore with deities. Notably in Thor, Love and Thunder, we discover the Temple of Eternity, which shows us the statues of Eternity, Infinity, Death, whom we saw again in Agatha all along. Watcher, whom we might see again in the Fantastic Four, since he appears during major events that change a universe. There is also the Living Tribunal, teased in Multiverse of Madness, Aeon, and even the One Above All, the equivalent of God in Marvel lore. But Galactus could especially be connected to the mythology of the Celestials. Remember, in Eternals, we learn that almost every planet contains within it a seed of a Celestial. This seed waits for a planet to become overpopulated to give birth to a new Celestial, and that's exactly Galactus's criterion as well. He targets planets that are well populated and technologically developed, and we know that in the movie, the Fantastic Four not only created a technologically advanced world, but also a world without any war. So probably an overpopulated planet is likely to attract these two entities. Galactus could therefore be the ultimate predator of the Celestials. A being who maintains a cosmic balance between the proliferation of galaxies and the life created by the Celestials, and he comes to keep it in check so that there isn't too much of it in the universe. In the end, all of this remains very natural. It's a cycle. Well, even if the director said he won't appear in the movie, just in case, here's a brief summary of his story. Victor is from the small fictional Eastern European nation of Latveria. He grew up in a gypsy community with a father who was a healer and a mother who secretly practiced black magic. Their people are persecuted, and his mother Cynthia is killed during a pact with Mephisto while trying to save him. His father dies protecting Victor from the oppressive regime. These tragic events deeply mark young Victor and fuel his desire for power and revenge. But young Victor is also a genius, and he is noticed by Empire State University in New York and receives a scholarship. Here, he meets Reed Richards, his future intellectual rival, yet Victor is fixated on saving his mother from Mephisto. He then creates a machine to try to contact her, but when Reed tries to convince him that his calculations are wrong, Victor ignores him out of excessive pride. The experiment goes wrong, and Doom, humiliated and disfigured, retreats into exile with a sect of Tibetan monks. Unable to take a step back, he holds Reed Richards responsible for his downfall. With the monks, he learns the mystic arts and becomes one of the most powerful sorcerers in the Marvel Universe. The priests then begin to worship him and forge him an armor that combines advanced technology and magic. Back in Latveria, he leads a revolution and overthrows the government. He then takes control of the country and turns it into a technological and prosperous nation, all ruled with an iron fist. He has frequently interacted with the Fantastic Four, switching between ally and enemy. He even became godfather to their second daughter after saving Sue from death. But contrary to common belief, he isn't just a villain tied to that family. On the contrary, Doom appears much more often in many other comics than in those of the Fantastic Four. He is now one of the most important characters in the overall Marvel lore, and that's also why he probably won't be a major part of the movie. But according to rumors, the name of his country will appear, suggesting that he, or at least his country, does indeed exist in Universe 828. Alright, to finish with the characters, let's discuss Herbie, the small household robot crucial to the team. In this case, he's probably there to sell lots of toys, but it's also a nod to the animated series from the 70s where he first appeared, with a program specifically designed to detect Galactus. We'll see if they use it in the story, but it's a pretty clever addition. What a story! Alright, before we enter the spoiler zone, let's quickly talk about the film's plot. Basically, we arrive in a universe where the Fantastic Four have already been around for 4 years. Reed Richards and his family are known and recognized as space pioneers. But their status as heroes has made them celebrities. They are already experienced, already involved in major exploits, and the beginning of the movie should show us their power, their team dynamic, and probably a few confrontations, just to set the scene properly. It will also be an opportunity to introduce the Future Foundation, to explain how world peace is maintained, and to highlight the specific traits of each member. Reed's scientific side, Sue's humanism, Ben's kindness, and Johnny's impulsiveness. The movie should center on 2 main points: little Franklin Richards' arrival and the warning of an apocalyptic cosmic threat. The Silver Surfer appears, announcing the imminent arrival of Galactus, a colossal being who has come to consume the Earth. From that point on, Reed will devote all his intellectual abilities to developing a survival strategy. Several options will be considered: technology, weapons, hiding the planet, or more daring solutions, and that suggests a very tactical angle. And be careful, we're now entering the spoiler zone, the danger zone. We're going to try to guess how the movie might unfold, so for those who are more cautious, you can skip ahead to the conclusion. The first space journey of the Fantastic Four, since they acquired their powers, probably takes them aboard Galactus' ship, the TA-2A sequence that lets us grasp the scale of the threat. They'll realize they can't defeat him, similar to Thunderbolts. Knowing they're powerless will make them return to Earth to rethink their plans. Some shots suggest that a planetary defense system will be put in place, especially with this scene in Paris, and that several years will pass, marked by the growth of little Franklin and Ben's famous beard. And it's probably him, Franklin, who is the real center of the problem. In the latest clips, we see that Sue goes into space while she's still pregnant. The child could be seen by Galactus as a key element, or even as a bargaining chip to spare the Earth. In the comics, Franklin is one of the most powerful mutants in the Marvel Universe. He might play a more discreet role in this movie, but he will become a key player in the following ones, especially maybe in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. In History of Marvel from 2019, we learned that Galactus' sole purpose all along has been to accumulate enough energy to pass it on to a successor capable of creating a new universe. And that successor is Franklin Richards. It's possible Galactus might spare Earth if Franklin promises to eventually take his place, but we don't know for sure. A deal the team will definitely refuse, forcing them to flee. And all of this could lead to a childbirth scene on the ship on the way back, as this shot suggests. Because in one of the latest trailers, Sue is seen returning to Earth holding a baby. This suggests the movie spans several years. And when Galactus really arrives on Earth, the big question will be whether the heroes are ready. The trailers suggest that a methodical plan has been prepared, but its effectiveness remains uncertain. Some imagine a tragic ending with their world destroyed, which isn't too bad since it's an alternate universe, but I don't believe that for several reasons. First, I doubt Marvel would release 2 consecutive movies with bad endings, since Doomsday is supposed to end with the multiverse's destruction and Doom's victory. But above all, some Doomsday filming takes place in the Fantastic Four's universe, possibly with an older Franklin, so their world could survive at least until Doomsday. Galactus would then be defeated, but not killed. Luckily, it would be silly for Marvel to use him as a one-movie villain. He's an iconic character who could return in the future, so pushing him back or trapping him in another dimension are ways to keep him as a future threat. As in the comics, the Surfer might turn against him. Originally, Alicia Masters convinces the Surfer to spare humanity. Here, maybe it will be Johnny Storm who takes on that role, since it seems that in the movie, he has a crush on Shallabal. Careful, we're about to talk about a post-credits scene. Some screen test feedback mentions a sequence where Sue Storm discovers Dr. Doom in Franklin's room with a hand on the cradle. A striking image that suggests Doom is already interested in the child's potential. But be careful, it's the first time I've heard that a test screening already includes a post-credits scene. So maybe Marvel just wanted it to leak to gauge the reaction. So personally, I have doubts about its final inclusion. And then, if we don't know Dr. Doom yet in this scene, it means he'll be there to kidnap Franklin, which could explain why the Fantastic Four go to seek help from the Avengers. Except that in the first Doomsday list, we learn that Doom attacks the X-Men, but also that the X-Men are going to fight the famous Fantastic Four. The actor who plays Nightcrawler let slip that he has a fight scene against Pedro Pascal, which means the Fantastic Four and Doom could be allies at that moment, which doesn't fit at all with this post-credit scene. Anyway, it's unclear, but if Marvel finally decides not to introduce Doom in the movie, this post-credit scene would then be their last chance before Doomsday. But maybe it's better to have a real memorable scene focused on Doom himself. Anyway, we know that Marvel has big plans for the Fantastic Four, a sequel is already in development. The goal seems clear, to shift the center of the MCU from the Avengers to a new generation of heroes. The Fantastic Four and the X-Men would be the pillars of this new era. Iron Man and Captain America would step aside, maybe recast later, but with a secondary role. This movie stands out as nearly unique, being completely separate from all previous Marvel projects. Even Deadpool and Wolverine, who also have many connections with the old Marvel projects, but it was important for me to lay out all the factors that help you better understand the past, present, and future stakes. And if you haven't seen my latest analysis video on Superman, it's right here, and I recommend it, it's really good. See you next week for the analysis and breakdown of this movie. Meanwhile, remember to stay curious. That's the key to happiness. Bye.